Namaste and welcome to Detours with me, Anuradha Goyal, where I talk to some very interesting personalities about journeys of all kinds. Today, I'm going to take you to a small little Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan. Uh, and we can't get a better person to speak about it than our current ambassador to Bhutan, Ruchira Kambojji. I have been connected with Ruchiraji for a few years now. When she was posted, I think we connected when she was posted at UNESCO in Paris as India's permanent representative there. And I remember we kind of joined in a celebration when Nalanda and Chandigarh were inscribed by UNESCO. And I know she has worked on many, many sites to be inscribed by UNESCO. So welcome, Ruchiraji.
Thank you so much, Anuradha, and may I reciprocate the warm sentiments. I'm equally delighted to be in your program, and you're absolutely right. I think we have known each other virtually since my UNESCO days, which was from 2014 to 2017. And I have always admired your passion and the depth of your knowledge as far as our rich cultural heritage goes. And I also feel that every Indian should be very proud of who they are and to which great country and civilization they belong to. And I think you represent that great heritage so beautifully. So congratulations, and I'm delighted to be in your program.
Thank you so much. Ruchiraji, I visited Bhutan about 13 years ago when it was still a kingdom. It was yet to go to its first elections. And I carry a very, very warm memory of it. You know, it's a very mystical place. It's almost like a place sitting in the folds of Himalayas and holding many little stories. So we are going to request you to show us some of those gems of Bhutan. And let's start with my favorite question. You know, how old is Bhutan? How long have people been living in this country? And what are some of the oldest things that we can see in Bhutan?
No, thank you, Anuradha, for that very interesting question. I think history is often the best place to start if you want to get to know something very well, and nations and countries are no different. So as far as Bhutan goes, let me say that the date 1907 is a very important date, over 100 years ago. That was when the monarchy of Bhutan, as we know the monarchy of Bhutan, was first established with the enthronement of the first hereditary monarch of Bhutan, the Druk Gyalpo Gongsar Ugen Wangchuk. And that was when, in 1907, when he was crowned the first king of Bhutan, the temporal and secular administration was consolidated and unified under His Majesty. And he, needless to say, he united the nation, secured stability, ensured domestic tranquility, and strengthened the friendship and cooperation between Bhutan and British India. So I suppose you could say that the seeds of Bhutan as a nation state, as we know Bhutan today, was sown in 1907 with the election of the first hereditary monarch. And if you look at it, this bore fruit a century later when in 2008, Bhutan adopted its constitution and is today, as we know the country, both a monarchy and a constitutional democracy. So I think that is the history of Bhutan in a nutshell. And to the second part of your question, I think that's very interesting. What are the oldest things I think you said that one can see in Bhutan? So, you know, just like India, Bhutan, or the Dragon Kingdom, or Drukyul as it's known, is a country with an immensely rich cultural heritage. And what is remarkable about Bhutan, that as they have modernized over time, you know, they ended the isolationism in 1999. And today they are also a modern country. It's a new Bhutan that we see. And I certainly hope that you will come to Bhutan next year when COVID is behind us, hopefully. This country, despite having one foot forward and very much in sync with the fast changing times that we live in, has also maintained and not only maintained but strengthened its unique identity. And so, you know, at every nook, corner, and cranny of Bhutan, you will get to see mesmerizing antique and unique and beautiful Bhutanese architectural grandeur. Now, this could be exhibited in the form of zongs or fortresses,
Yes.
monasteries for which the country is well known, chortens or stupas, lakhangs or temples, and of course, traditional Bhutanese homes. And, you look at, let me take one example, the Simtokha Zong. It is located in Thimphu. It was Bhutan's first zong built in the 17th century, and important also because last year when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji came to Bhutan on a state visit, he loaned or gifted to them the beautiful statue of Zhabdrung Nawang Namgyal. This is a loan from the government and people of India to the government and people of Bhutan. And this is a statue in a beautiful zong, the first zong. It is the pride of the Bhutanese. So that is one tiny example of something very old and very beautiful that you see. Then, of course, the famous Taksang Monastery, popularly known as Tiger's Nest.
Yes.
I think anyone who comes to Bhutan must visit this beautiful and splendid place, as I've done myself.
Yes.
Then there is the National Museum of Bhutan, located at Paro, or the Iron Bridge, located at Tamchok Lakhang in Paro. So these are some of the very old things that you see here, which are beautifully, managed and maintained by the Bhutanese. In fact, they are a must visit for any Indian tourist visiting, or any tourist for that matter, visiting Bhutan. Then, of course, there is this National Institute for Zurich Chusum, which maintains the cultural heritage and legacy of the 13 arts and crafts of Bhutan. This is located in Thimphu. And I must tell you, it's a beautiful place because it showcases the 13 traditional arts and crafts of Bhutan. So this is just to give you a very small flavor of some of the oldest things that you can see, whether these are zongs or monasteries or stupas or temples or traditional Bhutanese architecture. Also, Anuradha, I want to mention to you that, the Constitution of Bhutan also prescribes and accords importance to the preservation and promotion of Bhutan's cultural heritage. That I find very fascinating because that gives it an institutional framework. So to be very specific, Section 1 of Article 4 of the Constitution of Bhutan accords importance to the preservation and promotion of Bhutan's cultural heritage, cultural life, and objects of artistic value and interest. Not only that, I must tell you that it seeks to promote the tangible and intangible arts with additional components that also include the famous mass dance of Bhutan. I'm sure you've heard of the famous mass dance of Bhutan. Very quickly to tell you, since this is also one of the oldest things, the mass dance of the Drametse community is a sacred dance performed during the Drametse festival in honor of Guru Padmasambhava, who is regarded as the second Buddha in Bhutan, and was also, by the way, inscribed by UNESCO in 2008 on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So I think in a nutshell, these are some of the oldest things that you would see in this beautiful, very unique and, country with which India has very special relations. And I think any tourist coming to Bhutan must read a little bit about Bhutan's history and culture. You'll be very impressed. And I think then you will enjoy the country much more.
I remember visiting the National Museum in Paro, and if I'm not wrong, it's built in a very unique conch shell shaped, in a shank shape. And that's what stands out in my memory. And to me, Bhutan is something which is very well rooted in its own culture, even when it's looking at the future and it's assimilating all that is happening in the world, which is something not many countries, especially in Asia, have managed to do, to stay extremely rooted in their own culture. And that's something probably Bhutan can teach the world.
I think that's an excellent point that you've made. And I fully agree with you. And I think, ideally, that's how one should be, because one has to contemporize, one has to live in the present. But at the same time, it is your root that makes you what you are. So how can you not remember that? And how can you not present it with an immense amount of pride. So I think you're absolutely right. Bhutan does that beautifully. And because you talked about the National Museum of Bhutan located at Paro, I think it's a very unique structure.
Yes.
And just recently, actually, it has been modernized and it has reopened to the public. And India was associated with this project. I'm so happy to tell you. And we supported them in this project. And the current version of the National Museum is so beautiful, and not just the unique structure, as you very rightly mentioned, but the way the exhibits have been showcased is, I think, quite beautiful. So to every Indian through your program, I will say, please visit the National Museum of Bhutan. It's located at Paro, and just as you get off the flight, because the airport is in Paro, beautiful Paro city, it's not very far. It's just a hop, skip and jump away.
Yes, and Paro is such a lovely city. It's just an airport and a lane probably. If it has not grown too big.
No, it has. I think you have to come to Bhutan. Paro is a very beautiful city, and not just the airport, but you get to see all their various, cultures showcased so beautifully. And now, since there's so much happening in Bhutan, there's some very beautiful hotels also. There are some luxury hotels also, and the Indian tourist will never be disappointed if he or she decides to make Paro the base.
Great. So let's talk about the India and Bhutan relationship. I mean, we know that we share a very, very strong a neighborhood and as well as a cultural relationship with Bhutan. But how old is it? When did it actually start? Was Bhutan ever a part of larger Indian territory, or has it always been independent?
Yes, no, thank you, Anuradha. Good question. You are absolutely right. In fact, you've answered the question in some ways. Fully, I would say. A very short answer, but very apt. Bhutan has always been independent. You're absolutely right. It's always been proudly independent, and that's what it remains till this day. And yes, the second part of the question, what is this relationship, the special relationship between Bhutan and India? You're absolutely right. It's uniquely special. Bhutan is a very dear and close friend of India. Our two countries have cooperated over the years, over the decades, in diverse sectors. And today, I think our relationship stands at a point where it is an example to the rest of the world, if I may say so, in terms of how two neighbors are living together in harmony and close friendship and cooperating closely for the benefit of each other. To take you again a little back into history, it was in the late 1950s when the first Prime Minister of India had traveled to Bhutan. That was a historic visit, half by foot, half traveling on a yak, when he had been received by His Majesty, the third King of Bhutan. And that visit laid the framework of the relationship as we see it today. And over the years, this relationship has grown. It has been nurtured by the wise Druk Gyalpos of Bhutan, the monarchy of Bhutan, and also by successive leaders from India. And I must come immediately down to the present. Since 2014, the relationship has been on a sharp upward trajectory. Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji had visited Bhutan in 2014. All of you know, all of your listeners know that this was his first foreign visit after he assumed office. And again, in 2019, he almost repeated that when Bhutan was among his very first foreign visits abroad. So I think a signal from the Prime Minister at the topmost level sends such a powerful message, and I think that is a statement in itself.
Right.
The importance that India attaches to its relationship with Bhutan. And likewise, from Bhutan end, this spirit has been reciprocated because the Prime Minister of Bhutan in 2018, His Excellency Dr. Lote Tshering, also visited India, his first foreign country, immediately after he assumed office. He was also in India in 2019 in May, when Prime Minister Modi ji was sworn in for a second time. And also I must add that the Foreign Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar, made Bhutan his first foreign visit immediately after he assumed the office of the Foreign Minister of India. So you can see that at a political level, our two countries are extremely close, and this relationship has been nurtured over the years. And then if you look at the various levels of any relationship, political, economic, trade, culture, people to people, science and technology, space science and technology, financial technology integration, this relationship has grown. And today it stands at a place where I think we can, say absolutely unequivocally that Bhutan is a very dear friend and partner of India. There's absolute faith and trust in the relationship. And I think importantly also, the people-to-people contacts are very rich and special. You have a large number of Bhutanese students studying in India.
Right.
And that is the maximum number of Bhutanese students are in India. And even as Bhutan has, grown over the years, and many of its youth also study in other countries, but India still remains a preferred destination.
What about the spiritual ties? You know, I mean, Bhutan is a primarily Buddhist country, and we know, the eastern part of India is where the Buddhism was kind of born with Gautam Buddha. Spiritual ties that India and Bhutan share.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you raised that question, because had you not done it, I would have done it myself. I think what really is very striking and very important and links our two countries in this important bond are the spiritual ties. Everyone knows the story about Siddhartha Gautam, Buddha, and Buddhism traveled from India also to Bhutan. And importantly, everyone would also know, your listeners would also know the story about the second Buddha, or Guru Padmasambhava as he's known. Yes. So very quickly, let me say that Guru Padmasambhava was an Indian saint, and he's popularly revered as Guru Rinpoche in Bhutan. And I think perhaps many of your listeners, and you certainly would know about his birth. It is widely believed that he was born on a lotus blossom floating in Lake Dhanakosha in the kingdom of Udayana, present-day Odisha. And then in the 8th century, of the many places that the great Guru visited, Bhutan is the most important place visited by Guru Rinpoche. And in modern day times, let me tell you that Guru Rinpoche is regarded as one of the patron saints of Bhutan, and he has a huge impact on the lives of the Bhutanese people from the time they are born till the time of their death. And therefore, I think this bond, this linkage between India and Bhutan, the people of India and the people of Bhutan, is so very special. Because not only you have Siddhartha Gautam, Buddhism, but you also have the second Buddha, Guru Rinpoche as he's known, who was born in India, who traveled to Bhutan, and today is one of the greatest names that you will hear in Bhutan. So his statue can be found in many homes and monasteries, and from the first prayers, toddlers mumble, to grand state festivals, from fleeting dreams of hermits to formidable public monuments, Guru Rinpoche forms the focus of Bhutanese spirituality and religious culture. And I think this bond, I think, must be mentioned in your program, something that links our two countries so closely. That, in 2018, we had done an excellent project here in the embassy. I can't help but bring it forward, where we had brought out a book titled Padmasambhava of Udayana.
Wow.
And we had translated this from English to Dzongkha, the national language of Bhutan, as you know.
Beautiful.
And it was launched on 9th January at the Royal University of Bhutan. And as much as I could, because, it was a project which had a limited number of books, as much as I could, I have distributed this book in Dzongkha to my Bhutanese friends and colleagues. And to the best of my knowledge, they really appreciated this book that serves to highlight this great spiritual linkage that we have between our two countries.
Yes, and what I remember of Bhutan, I remember it as a very spiritual space. You can see people moving around with a prayer wheel in their hands, which is continuously being rotated. From prayer wheels almost everywhere you go, whether it's a hotel or whether it's a temple, whether it's a monastery, you always have a prayer wheel. I remember one place I saw a prayer wheel being moved by water. It somewhere.
Yeah, we have one in our embassy. It's so beautiful, prayer wheel being moved by water.
Yes.
And absolutely right. I think this is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. Actually, spirituality is in the air.
Yes.
So I tell your listeners that, Bhutan is not tourism in Bhutan is not the usual tourism you do,
Yes.
where you go and you see monuments and take pictures in front. That's also beautiful, and you must do that wherever you go. But this is a country to be experienced. It's in the air, it is everywhere. You've got to feel it also, that spirituality. When you go to the monasteries in Lakhang, as Anuradha is saying, and spend a minute, just don't be in a rush.
Right.
It's a special kind of tourism.
Yes. In fact, Bhutan is the first place where I actually entered inside a monastery. I think it's on the outskirts of Thimphu. There is a monastery. I just walked in and they just invited me in and offered me their butter tea. And we had a conversation. I spoke with a lot of those lamas in whatever language we could. But it's an experience that stays with me because that was the first time I entered inside a Buddhist monastery and saw what it looks like from inside.
It's very beautiful. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yes, it is very beautiful. But more than the physical beauty, like you say, it's the energy, that spiritual energy that you absorb in that place, which stays with you. Yes. Another important thing that I noticed, of course, this is an old memory, is the Bhutanese textiles.
Yes.
Very, very unique tradition. And if I remember, I saw a loom in almost every home or a shop. People would weave their thing. And, it's a small country. There are not too many cloth shops, so to say. But there is a textile museum, which means they really value their textile tradition. And when you go into that museum, even though it's a small museum, but it showcases the textile tradition so beautifully.
No, I would agree with you. I mean, and let me congratulate you. Your knowledge of Bhutan is already quite deep, and you're absolutely right. Firstly, the fact that you mentioned that, it's a common sight. You're right, Anuradha, in Bhutan to see every home with a handloom.
Yeah.
And every region has its own weaving traditions and designs. But the Lunsi region, the eastern region of Bhutan, which also happens to be the ancestral home of the royal family, is perhaps the most renowned when it comes to textiles and weaving. And I will fully agree with you that Bhutanese textiles represent a very rich and complex repository of a unique art form. And you know what's unique about it? The abundance of color, and the variation of pattern, and also the intricate dyeing and weaving techniques. I think that really stands out. I mean, they're smashing absolutely. Their weaves and the beautiful colors, just like India. We are such a country with such vibrant color. And the other thing that I can tell you, I think that might please some of our listeners, is that the weavers are mostly women.
Yes.
And they're so innovative and their artistic skills are so highly developed. They've been nurtured over centuries of time that it's such a pleasure to witness or even purchase something. And
if I remember correctly, I was told that most people weave their own clothes. So they would weave and wear it, so there is no real trade commerce. It's not really woven as a business. It's woven more to wear yourself.
No, you're absolutely right. But with a little change, of course, you're right that the earliest known textiles were woven out of fabrics.
Yes.
And incidentally, those were obtained from the nettle grass and animal hair, especially that of yak and sheep.
Yes.
As you can imagine, with time and modernization, and with the introduction of synthetic fabrics and dyes, in the market, people largely chose these synthetic products. As it happens in India too, also. Because the other one in older times was a long and laborious process. So it was easier, I guess.
Yes.
However, interesting to see how the wheel of time moves.
Right.
Today, as people become more health conscious, they have gone back to prefer the organic dyes and fabrics over the synthetic ones.
Right. It's a circle which has come back.
So the age-old practice of Bhutanese textiles is still in vogue.
Right.
So I think that is so beautiful. It's a part of their rich culture and tradition, as you have yourself mentioned. Just yesterday, the Indian Council of Cultural Relations had held a webinar on weaving, on textile traditions across the globe. And guess what? I mean, no surprises. Bhutan featured in that webinar, led by the Webinar. The Honorable Prime Minister, of course, of India, provided the inaugural address, and we had the immense privilege of the Royal Queen Mother of Bhutan, Her Majesty, who spoke about the rich royal traditions of Bhutan. And there was also a very modern designer who came in the subsequent sessions who also spoke about Bhutan's rich textile tradition. So whoever heard that webinar would have been privy to the fantastic knowledge that they gave. And also last year I did something very interesting here in Bhutan with the Royal Textile Academy that you have visited, which is such a beautiful building, and with the Khadi Village Industries Commission. So the Chairman, Khadi Village Industries Commission, and the Fashion Design Council of India, together with the Royal Textile Academy, we did a fashion show actually, fusing Khadi and Thazo. Thazo is Bhutanese weaving, and bringing in models from India and Bhutan to showcase both Khadi and Thazo, because it coincided with Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. And it was such a wonderful event, and it wove in both Khadi and Thazo. So you had Indian models and Bhutanese model wearing Khadi creations, and half of it was Thazo, which is the Bhutanese rich weaving techniques. And it was a beautiful show, something we won't forget for a long time. And Her Majesty, the Royal Queen Mother, Shi Sankhechodon Wangchuk, had graced that.
And she speaks very beautifully. I've heard her speak at, I think, Jaipur Literature Festival.
Yes.
Very beautifully.
She had extended her royal patronage to this event also. So we were blessed and very fortunate. And I think this is something that when your listeners come to Bhutan, as and when and if they do, they should visit the Royal Textile Academy. It's beautiful.
Yes, they should. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up by asking you to tell us quickly about a couple of important festivals of Bhutan, and also your personal experience of living in Bhutan, coming from one of the most populated countries to living in one of the tiniest countries in the world.
Okay, good questions, all of them. No, as far as my own experience goes, I feel very privileged. I feel very honored that I am the current Indian ambassador to Bhutan. For us, as I've already told you, it's a very special, uniquely special relationship that has only grown over the years. And it is such an immense honor to be the Indian ambassador in Bhutan. I think one thing I can say straight away, that when you come to Bhutan from India, what strikes you immediately is how beautiful is small.
Yes.
So I think that is the first thing that struck me. And then what struck me was, the Bhutanese people, they are a very disciplined people. And they are also a very unified people.
Yes.
And they are a very soft people, and they are a very friendly people. I think, Anuradha, you would have experienced all of this yourself?
Yes. And I came pretty much in pre-mobile phone, pre-internet era. So it was even more warm, and there were a lot of surprises. Today you can see a lot of pictures before you go, but I had no idea what it looks like when I landed there, and I just landed there on a whim. And I drove via road, so I came via Phunchilong, and I wanted to
fly in. Yeah. This time you must fly in, because you have the beautiful landing at Paro Airport. It's mesmerizing. Yes. And one more thing about Bhutanese people that struck me, coming from a country such as ours, which is a big country, is how spiritual they are.
Yes.
They are a very spiritual people also, and religion plays a very important part in their lives. And I think what really will stay with me forever is how disciplined and how unified they are, and how beautifully culture unites the whole nation. And of course, it's a very unique model, because you have a very enlightened monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's also a very pro-service, pro-people monarchy. And of course, at the same time, you have a constitutional democracy. So it's a beautiful model. It's a beautiful country to witness and to be in. And I don't need to tell you to come to Bhutan. I know India sends a lot of tourists into Bhutan, but it's a in your lifetime, once at least.
I do remember people saying they were very happy with the king. They were very happy. They did not yet understand what democracy is and how is it going to change their world, in what way. They had no idea, but they were all very happy for the king. And I think somewhere they were always blessing the king.
You are absolutely spot on. I don't think I need to add anything beyond this, and that remains the case today also. And as far as the festivals, there's one thing that I can add, which might have been left out. They have very tasty cuisine also.
Yes.
So, something that we Indians can also identify with. So the national dish is the emadatsi, or the chili cheese. It's very delicious when eaten with rice. So I think many Indians would love that. They grow a lot of rice, and they grow a lot of maize, and also, some of the traditional grains, which is called the 9 basic crops, or drunagu: rice, wheat, barley, peas, buckwheat, millet, mustard, and soybeans. So this is very nice, and you'll find many, many restaurants in Bhutan serving Bhutanese cuisine, but also international cuisine. So continental, Chinese, there'll be no dearth of that. And as Anuradha mentioned herself, there is the very special butter tea, or suja, as they call it, and it's really worth trying at least once, if not several times, in case you take to it immediately. And as far as their music and festivals, they have the mass dances, they have a lot of traditional songs and dances, and it's really beautiful. I myself have participated as ambassador, in some community dances, and I've greatly enjoyed it. So do that if you come and visit.
Yes,
and
in fact,
choose.
Yeah, in fact,
Did you do that also?
I didn't visit at the time of a festival, but I was reading my own blogs that I had written way back in 2007 before I started this conversation, and I remember I have written that the best pizza that I've ever had in my life was in Thimphu.
You're right.
In a small place called Seasons. I don't know if she's still around.
No, Seasons is very much there, and I will second you on this. The best pizza I've had in Bhutan is in a restaurant called Cloud9.
Okay.
Delicious, fresh, because everything is so organic. And one more thing I just want to add, sports, because sports also part of the cultural landscape of a country. So Bhutan's national sport is archery. Did you know that?
Yes, I have seen them practicing that.
Yeah, it's very entertaining to watch.
Yes.
It's very passionate, and then they also have the dart, or the kuru, which is part of their tradition and culture. But at the same time, as I said, 1 foot forward also. So modern sports such as football, cricket, golf, tennis, badminton, volleyball are also encouraged. And cricket, I'm happy to say they have a women's cricket team.
Wow.
And they're doing very well. Yeah. So, it's a very beautiful and unique country, that has 1 foot forward, but 1 foot very firmly, as you yourself said, rooted in their immensely rich tradition and culture.
As our Indian tradition says that the more rooted you are, the more you flourish.
Absolutely.
The deeper your roots are, the more you flourish. And Bhutan is a living example of
Outstanding example. Outstanding
example. And also that they wear their culture on the sleeve. They are not shy of their own culture, their own religion.
They're proud of it, actually.
They're proud of it, and they wear it.
They wear it. In fact, we're running out of time, but the next one, we didn't even touch on their national dress, which is so beautiful.
You can talk about it. That's okay. You can quickly in a minute.
You might have seen pictures, and you've seen Anuradha when you've come. So the women wear this beautiful long skirt called the kira, and on top they wear a short, very smart jacket called the tego. It's beautiful. It's such beautiful colors, and they all look so lovely and nice. And the men wear the go, and they look also very dashing and debonair. Right. And they wear it on all, sort of public. Formal occasions, and they wear it so beautifully and proudly. It's quite a sight to behold. And I think that's so nice. It's pretty much like we Indian women in formal occasions wear the sari, which is very much a part of our beautiful heritage. And also, I think on a day-to-day basis, I think Indian women wear the shalwar kurta again in the workplace. So we also wear our heritage to the workspace, because as Anuradha has put it so beautifully, that you go nowhere if you don't respect your own culture and your tradition.
And if you want the world to respect your culture, you have to first respect it yourself.
Absolutely. And I think Bhutan's a shining example of that. As is India now. I'm so happy.
As is India, yes.
Happy in India also.
Yes.
Do you wear a sari normally, or do you wear the shalwar kurta more often?
I now wear saris for all formal events.
Yes, we all do that. For the
But when I'm
formal,
traveling, it's more of comfort depending on where you are.
yes, yes. I think the shalwar kurta is a very good halfway point between,
Right.
the formal dress and yet not wearing a Western attire.
Yes. Ruchiraji, thank you so much for taking us on a tour of Bhutan, both in a temporal way from its history to current day, and also taking us across various sights and sounds of Bhutan. And I hope you'll come back with come back for another episode on some other aspects of Bhutan or wherever you go in your next assignment.
Well, if your viewers will have me, and if they haven't got too bored, certainly.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anuradha. All the best to you, and greetings to all my friends from India. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Detours. You can also join us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our handle is Inditales, INDITALES. See you soon.